Well, today we are making a Valentine cupcake cookie jar for the Dollhouse. Stay tuned and see how fun and easy this is to do. Alright, we're starting out pretty much the same as we always do when we make a cookie jar. The only difference is this time my strip of paper is only a 1/2 inch wide by the 4 inches or so long. And I'm going to pre-curl it so that it's going to want to wrap around my Sharpie marker. And I grabbed an actual Sharpie this time because that was the one that I grabbed. I'm going to mark. Remember, we do this so we don't accidentally glue this to our pen. I am going to lay a bead of glue, a nice thick tacky glue, and try to have a nice even coat of glue. Because remember, this is our foundation that we are building our cookie jar on. I'm going to do some on that end just so that it will stick to itself. Roll it nice and straight and tight. I'm already off. Let's see if I can get that not off. Go. Yeah, I'm making this only a 1/2 inch tall on our center because most of the cookie jars shaped like this that I saw were shorter than the other cookie jars, so that's reflected in this shape. So now our little paper core needs to dry. When that's dry, I'll come back and we will start on covering it with some polymer clay. Alright, the glue has dried, so now it's time to cover our little core with some clay. And I just have some random white clay that I had left over from something else. Any white clay will work for this because not much of it's going to show. And I need some TLS. And I'm going to put, remember we use TLS when we're working with anything, or putting raw clay onto anything. In this case, it's going to be going on to our cardstock, and it will act as a glue and just kind of put it together. And any white clay will work for this because you're not going to see much of it. I think this might be white with translucent mix that was left over from yesterday's potatoes, but I'm not sure. I've been working on several projects lately at the same time. So I'm going to put that on the bottom. A little too big. It's fine though. I'm just kind of snugging that up so that it's nice and tight with our cardstock. I'm going to just kind of cut around it so that I have the base covered and fairly smooth. Lift it up. And like I said, not much of this is going to show, so don't worry about fingerprints on this layer or anything like that. Those are fine. Let's cut it off nice and neat though with that paper. And this is easier when you're not trying to do it where the camera can see it. There, now we have a nice finished looking inside. I am going to make a lid, and this is the first step of our shape. This is just giving us a cylinder shape. We are going to get this baked, and then we're going to come back and make a cupcake shape, and then we'll add our color to it. So I'm going to make a little snake that will fit inside, a little smaller. There, that will be a good size. And I'm going to cut. All right, got clay sticking to me. All right, we are going to bake both these pieces at the recommended temperature for about, I think I'm going to give them 10 minutes, and I'll put this one back in when I bake the other again. So it'll get baked repeatedly, so it'll be fine. So let's give these 10 minutes and then I'll allow them to cool to room temperature, and then I'll be back and we'll move on to the next step. All right, so our basic cylinder is cooked and fairly cooled. So now I am going to get some more of my same white clay. And I'm going to form kind of a snake. I want it to be long enough that it's going to go around the top of this. There, that'll be more than enough. But I want to make my basic shape with the white clay, and then we'll come in and we'll use the colored clay on top of this. Now what I want to do is make this, kind of work that down so that it blends in and makes, we're starting to make a cupcake shape. It doesn't have to be perfect, but we're just kind of working this down, adding some width at the top and then easing it down to where it's pretty much the diameter that we had earlier at the base. I'm going to press it down on my tray, and I'm working that up so that it pretty much hits the tray. I want that to be fairly flat. And this is not going to be a perfect shape. And now I want to use some cornstarch. Dip my finger in cornstarch and start using that. I want to smooth, not get it completely smooth necessarily, but get it smoother and refine my shape. I want it just slightly wider at the top than it is at the bottom. And when your finger starts to stick, dip it back in the cornstarch. And I'm pressing hard down on the base, and as it goes, holding my fingers in kind of a V shape, trying to encourage basically, I can't explain it any other way than a cupcake shape. And it's not going to be a perfect cupcake shape. It's going to be, it's the indication of a cupcake. And I want to get this nice and flat on the top. Try and get that smooth, because when you take the lid off you will see this part. I'm not sure why I've got colored clay there. I apparently had colors of clay. All right, now I'm going to bake this for 10 more minutes, and then when that is cooled, then we can come, actually, let's go ahead, let's make sure this still fits. We'll start working on our lid also. Oh, our lid is a little bit too big, so that's okay. We can make that a little smaller. Even though it's baked, I can shave off little bits of it. Let's make sure that's going to fit. Yes, now that fits. And let's go ahead and turn that upside down and start making getting the lid up to the right size too. Might as well do this at the same time. It's not a very even snake. Let's try that again. That's what happens when I try to hurry. I do it wrong. That's a more even looking snake. Okay. So I'm going to put TLS around one edge here. And this probably won't make the lid quite fat enough, but it's starting to make it so that when I go to make the lid later, I won't have quite so much clay to add to it then. All right, off to the oven at recommended temperature and bake for 10 minutes. And when this is baked and cooled, I'll be back and we'll start on the next step. All right, our two white pieces are baked and cooled. It's actually the next morning. So now it's time to start making these look like a cupcake cookie jar. So I am taking inspiration from several different cookie jars I saw online. I'm not copying any one. I'm just kind of going by parts I liked out of different ones and ones I thought would be a little bit easier for everybody to make. So I am going to make the base of the cookie jar is going to be the base of the cupcake. So I have some red clay. I believe this is Sculpey 3 in Red Hot Red, and I have a Sculpey Pink, and I don't know what color this is. So I'm starting by making just a snake, and I'm going to make a snake. My fingers have red clay on them. And I'm making a skinnier snake out of the pink. What I'm going to do, I'm going to work on a small area at a time. And I'm hoping to get all the way around the cookie jar before baking, but if I don't, that's all right. I could bake this in a couple of pieces, but I'd like to do it all at once if I can. I'm going to cut a nice smooth top. I'm going to lay this on the wet TLS. That was TLS I put on there in case I did, because I didn't mention that. I'm going to do that. Get this molded in the way you like it. Then I'm going to put the pink on. And since I actually had, I can still feel TLS over here. We'll trim the top up after we get done, before we bake. Like I said a couple of weeks ago, a week or so ago, if I didn't drop something, it wouldn't be one of my videos, now would it? And you could do this other colors, you could do other things, obviously. I just like this simple cupcake one, I think, for this month. For a February Valentine's Day cookie jar. I thought these were really cute. And my hands are shaking this morning. Somebody commented they couldn't do what I do because their hands shake. Mine do too. Some days worse than others. Some days my hands shake really badly, and I learned I've learned over the years how to kind of brace myself so that it doesn't affect my work too much. You just have to kind of work with your own limitations. Yeah. The big question is, do I have enough red? I think I do. It's sticking to my tile. This is probably not totally as interesting as some of you would like. Feel free to fast forward till I get this all put around here, but oops, pink next. And I'm going to have, see if I can squish this out just a little bit more. It's going to work out perfectly. Now, cut it off at the top, so it's nice and level. And then, okay, it looks like I got some little bits of pink on the tray, and then it rolled across it. That's okay, we can just cut that part off. I am going to get my dental pick because I've got a piece of errant clay there. Let's see, what did I do there? All right, that's easy enough to fix. Just pull those little bits off. Now I'm going to get some cornstarch on my fingers. Rub cornstarch over my hands. That way I won't be sticking as much. And if you need to straighten up your lines, go ahead and do that. Well, off camera, I'm going to do a little more trimming on that just to make sure that I have this exactly the way I want it. Now I am going to grab some brown clay, which we aren't going to use until later, and I'll tell you more about this brown later. But I want to, while I've got the red clay out, well, before I put the red clay away, I'm going to have to make my little cherry for the top. So we'll talk more about this brown clay when we get to the chocolate on our cookie jar. Take some of this red, make a ball. Let's get this a little bit skinnier. I don't want a huge long stem. I just want my stem to, oh come on. This would be much easier. I'm actually going to make this into a small ball. it will be much easier. There, I'm going to bake both of those. That will become our cherry on top of our cookie jar lid. I am going to bake the cookie jar and the little cherry both at recommended temperature for probably 10 minutes. Once they are baked and cooled, I'll be back and we'll work on the lid. All right, so these are all baked off. So I'm going to put those to the, I'm going to put the cherry to the side, hopefully in a spot where I won't lose it. And I've got a ball of brown clay. This is Sculpey 3 in, I think it's suede brown is what it said. I'm going to take my lid blank and I'm going to kind of fit that there. Yeah, it fits on. So let's go ahead and make kind of a cup. We're making the top to our cupcake. I'm going to get this formed around this, and then I'm going to form it to the right size for the cookie jar. All right, that's looking pretty good. So we want to take that out. I'm going to add some TLS, because remember we need to glue it on. If we don't put TLS on, it probably won't stay put. Wanted to make sure I had enough clay though before I started, before I put the TLS in there. Back on, wipe the excess TLS off my fingers. And now I'm going to find a texture tool, because I want to make this look a little bit textured like a cupcake. Now be sure you take it off of the cookie jar. And now this part needs to get baked again before we can add any more to it, because we don't want to ruin this shape. So I'm going to bake this for 10 minutes, let it cool, and then I'll be back. All right, this is all baked and cooled. So now it's time to put on some frosting and then our little cherry on the top. And for this, I'm just going to spread some TLS on the top, and then I've got some of the white clay. And this clay is really soft because of the translucent that's in it. And I'm going to kind of make, I don't want it to be even, I want it to look kind of like frosting that has dripped. And then a little dot of TLS, and we will put our cherry on the top. Now if you had something to use for sprinkles, you could add those, but I am going to bake this now at the recommended temperature for probably 10 minutes. I want to make sure that our TLS is completely cured, and when it bakes and cools back to room temperature, we'll come back and we will finish it off with some Mod Podge. All right, all our pieces are baked and they are cooled to room temperature. It's important to make sure it's cooled to room temperature before you add any Mod Podge, because if Mod Podge does not dry correctly, it can get cloudy or it could remain sticky. We want a very light coat since we're putting this on polymer clay, although it is polymer clay compatible. Gloss Mod Podge does have a habit of getting sticky if it's too thick. If you try to put it on something too warm or too thick, it also could remain cloudy. So I'm just going to coat the whole piece with a nice even coat, a very light even coat of gloss Mod Podge, and when this is dry, I'll come back and we will look at how our finished Valentine's cupcake cookie jar looks. So I'll be right back. All right, the Mod Podge is dry now, and there's kind of a look at our cookie jar. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, be sure and hit the like button. Leave me a comment. What kind of cookie jars would you like to see? I plan to do a lot more. Hopefully I can find something different for next week. We'll see. But over the next several months, I plan to do quite a few cookie jars because I've decided that the lady that lives in my dollhouse is going to collect cookie jars. That's why we're seeing so many. If you enjoy my content and you haven't subscribed, I encourage you to hit that subscription button and the notification bell so YouTube can let you know when I put up a new video. Be sure and check the blog post for photos and the Facebook group to see what else we're up to. And I will talk to you later. Bye.